This is BYU Sports Nation, the Reviewables. 1983 BYU football. The quarterback of that team, 1994 Super Bowl champion of the San Francisco 49ers and Pro Football Hall of Famer Steve Young is joining us via the Deseret First Credit Union hotline. Steve, great to have you with us. It's about time we added some more conversation to the legacy of this already incredible 1983 team.
Yeah, but you got to remember that I've spent the last 30 years people asking me, "Hey, were you on you won the national championship, didn't you?" And I was like, yeah, I did. Yeah. Like, no, I don't think you did. So it's like 1983 is one of those years where the regrets are, it's hard because as much as 84 was such a magical year, 83 was super close to that. And that's why it's, go through it is a little bit overarching pain, and then the rest of it's going to be like a really good. But just know that talking about it reminds me of how at that time, and then we should probably just talk about Baylor and just get it out of the way and then move on. But that was it. That was the Baylor game and Gerald McNeil and that whole thing. I remember of all the games I played in college, I remember that one almost more vividly than anything. I don't know why. Maybe your mind goes to the most painful thing. I don't know, but I can, there's other games I remember snippets of. I remember everything, but certain games I can remember the smell. I can remember the stadium. I can remember like vividly the things that went on, and that's one of them.
So that sticks in your cross still because that's the opening game, and if you win that, I mean, maybe this is the first undefeated team in BYU history. And
it would have been. We would have. It's so sad too, and we had it with the game. Baylor was pretty good. We just couldn't. It was like a shootout, and Gerald McNeil was this punt returner. He ended up going pro and was very successful. But Gerald McNeil was this kid. We couldn't tackle him on the punt return. And I don't know. You guys have the stats, but I want to say that he had like 500 yards in punt returns, kickoff returns. I don't know, but to lose that game I think it was 40-36, and to go 0-1, we were a good team, and I'd kind of grown into my role. My junior year, man, I was just, Jim McMahon had 73 NCAA records, and I was just trying to, in a lot of ways, just trying to keep afloat. But when we hit my senior year, I was ready to go, and the team was ready to go, and we played really well. Baylor was a good team, and we put up 36 and got beat, and that was a bummer. But some of my best runs, by the way, of all time, happened on that AstroTurf. The AstroTurf, it left a lot of blood in the shower in the locker room afterwards, but it was worth it for how quick you could cut. But that was a painful game, and we end up trying to climb out of that 0-1 hole the rest of the year to get into a place where we could win. Get the top 10. Our expectation was to be in the top 10. And do you guys know what we ended up that year?
Number 7,
which is the highest in BYU history up to that point.
Yeah, and number 7. And obviously, if we're undefeated, we wouldn't have started in a hole. It took us 3 weeks to get ranked, maybe a month to get ranked. And if you can imagine, if you beat Baylor on the road, just like when they went to Pitt the next year. Be honest with you, the same scenario, right? You're at Pitt in '84. And Robbie throws a touchdown and wins the game. And now you're starting from a place where you're now ranked day one rather than waiting a month to get ranked.
Steve, you win games against teams that finish ranked in the top 20 at Air Force and at UCLA. So and I know this is a huge hypothetical, if BYU does beat Baylor and goes undefeated, there were no undefeated teams in the country that season. Would BYU have won the national championship in '83?
And 84. Yeah, there's a chance. And I don't know. I don't remember the specifics of who did win the national championship. Probably Nebraska, someone like that. And,
Miami beat Nebraska. Yep.
Who was it?
Miami beat Nebraska in the bowl game to win it.
Miami. So it really depended on when that loss happened. We needed help in '84 to have it all break just the right way, for the rankings and have the timing of who lost when, and that kind of a thing. And then. But yeah, when we ended up beating Missouri in the Holiday Bowl, was Missouri ranked at the time? That would have been a key piece of the puzzle too.
They were not.
Yeah, so I doubt that in that way probably wouldn't have broken the same way. Was Michigan ranked in '84? I can't remember that.
They were not. They had been ranked as high as third in week 3, but Jim Harbaugh breaks his
fell,
arm, and then
right.
they kind of go to 6 and 4.
Yeah. So I don't know. So based on that, my quick analysis, not knowing a thing, as I just proved them to you.
Hey, it's been a minute.
I'm glad you guys brought me on for my expertise. Clearly, I'm adding a ton to this conversation.
Steve, I was born the day after the Utah State game in '83, so there you go.
All right. Thanks. Appreciate that. I'm in a little bit of a midlife crisis. I've had about 4 of them, but I just I'm just not. I'm not given an inch. And when I hear things like that, it makes me super mad, because I'm like, crap, that's not possible. Is that where I'm at? I refuse that fact.
Here's how much we love that team, though, Steve. We wanted to do this show to talk about '83, and it's interesting to hear you talk about that Baylor game, right? But we've identified a few unique things with this team. It's the highest-ranked team ever at number 7. Those 2 wins over teams that finished ranked top 20, that hasn't happened in any other season in BYU history with Air Force and UCLA. And then you finished second in the Heisman to Mike Rozier. Let's talk about that particular part. Did you feel like if Mike Rozier doesn't cross that 2,000-yard threshold, he was just the 4th player to ever do it, that you would have won the Heisman?
Yes, I do. I think that it was fun to think about. Jim McMahon had paved, well, obviously, Giff and everyone and everyone had paved the road, but Jim had paved the road nationally to be, kind of in that Heisman talk, and it was legitimate talk from day one, and we hit the ground running. And I remember kind of throughout the season, we'd win, and then we always would wait the next day to see what Nebraska had done. And Mike just couldn't. He just couldn't slow down, and there was no break. And you're right. When he finished at 2,000 yards, there was just nowhere to go. I finished, at distance second. I think it was close, but it wasn't close in a way. Like it was like I was definitely not. It wasn't like, ooh, wow, I was just right there. So Mike kind of smothered it in the end because they ran like crazy, and I just remember thinking if somebody could come in and hold him down to under 100 yards, 150 yards, there's a chance that we could do something, but it just didn't happen. So I went to New York for the Heisman announcement, and they treated me like a king until they announced it, and then I remember they handed me a sweatsuit. That had it was a blue sweatsuit pants and a sweatshirt, and like heavy, like the old school ones, like my gosh, they had 1950s, and it said Heisman, and that was I walked out into the street, and it was over. My parents were like, "Oh, that was fun. I got a sweatsuit," so that was good.
Steve Young, recipient of the 1983 Heisman sweatsuit, with this on BYU Sports Nation, the Reviewables.
That taught me very early that you win or you don't win. Like there's no second is pretty bitter. And I use that story a lot, by the way, is like, what it means to win. It's like, it means a lot because then you end up with a sweatsuit, and that's just not what you're looking for. But it was, and in many ways that paved the road for Ty when they got talking about the Heisman. It was a legitimate Heisman run. And Jim had done that a little bit, and I think even Mark had a little bit of a Heisman run. I can't remember exactly, but I think it played a role in when Ty made his big win over Miami, and then got a lot of momentum, and no one really got close to him. I think a lot of it was paved through those times. So I appreciate the '83 team. The '83 team was a really, really good team, and I'm not going to compare it to '84 because that's just goofy. But it's unfortunate that we didn't go undefeated because I think we kind of had that ability to do it.
You don't have to compare it per se, but Jerem and I are standing together on the hill that we think, based on the body of work and what this team did, especially winning 2 top 20 games on the road at Air Force and at UCLA, that there is a legitimate argument for this BYU football team to be the best in program history.
Well, if there was a bar in Provo, you could go down and have a fight over it. That's about what it's worth.
I think there's one now, Steve. I think there's one.
Well, I always say some of these kind of arguments are like, it's like, oh my gosh. But I mean, that's what makes it fun. But but certainly I think the point is the 83 team was a phenomenal football team. And comparing an 84, I mean, that's just, in some goofy ways, I see you can kind of play that game. But in the end, we got beat by Baylor. And Gerald McNeil, I still watch him catching the punt and going, oh, no, and we just couldn't catch him. And that was my own fault. I mean, I think there was a chance to win it in the end, and it didn't do it. So, I mean, in the end, like most things, in the end, if wishes were fishes, I can't remember why my dad had that one. I can't remember how it ends, but it makes me look like you really are old.
Good old grit. I love it.
But not only am I not an expert, I'm super old, so things are going well.
Listen, you completed 71% in 83. You're completing around 71% of your thoughts in this interview, so I think that's good, right?
I'm right on track. That's Hall of Fame material. Hall of Fame material.
Okay, let's talk about Missouri. So obviously there's the play that you get from Eddie Stinnett. But in reviewing that game, I was caught off guard by two plays. One is the fact that you get blindsided and cough up the ball, and Missouri should have jumped on that fumble. And then the next play, you don't want Lee Johnson to tie the game with the 42-yarder. You go for it on 4th and 10. And complete it to Wayman Hamilton, and that sets up the play. Those were two crazy plays, Steve.
Nutty. And the desperation that I had personally, when I got to BYU, Jim was there, and Mark had been there, and Giffen, and it just wears you out. And you have to win the WAC, you have to go to the Holiday Bowl, and then you got to win the Holiday Bowl, and you got to do it dramatically. It's like all these things that had to happen to really kind of qualify. I mean, people always say, you replaced Joe Montana. I was like, forget that. I replaced Mark Wilson, Gifford Nielsen, and Jim McMahon. Don't worry about it. I'm fine. But those few plays, I just feel like coaches, we'd gotten blistered by Ohio State the year before. We got really beat down. And I think at that moment, there was a feeling like, let's finish it. Let's do this. And I think and the conversations around it. And that pass to Wayman Hamilton was a nutty, what were we doing, you should be asking, right? Like, what were we thinking to put the game on the line on one play at 4th and 10? I guess we're lucky, because we would look really stupid if that didn't work out.
Well, it's interesting because Lavelle Edwards said of the iconic play of the throwback from Eddie Stinnett to you that it's a good thing he didn't know exactly what was happening until he was watching it happen, because he probably would have lost his mind. But when you get that play call and signal it in, what was the reception in the huddle of you running that play, which had worked earlier in the season, by the way, to try and beat Missouri?
We liked it. I liked that play. I mean, I look to the NFL today and what they're asking quarterbacks to do, and I love it. And I kind of wish that we would have been more innovative and not just had it be a throwback kind of crazy play. We could have done all kinds of cool stuff that you just didn't think about back then. But this is something that I found completely in my wheelhouse. Like, throw me the ball. We're going to be fine. And Eddie, I remember Eddie in the huddle. I call the play and goes, Eddie goes, oh, what? What do I do again? And I go, Eddie, I'm going to hand it to you. And you can see right there, I said, Eddie, I'm going to hand it to you. Then you turn and throw it. And if you think about it, Eddie made no effort to look like he was going to run with the ball. He was so panicked. He got the ball and just turned. And then so Bobby Bell, an All-American linebacker, Bobby Bell, because Eddie didn't really make it look like it was going to be anything, he just turned and threw it. And Bobby Bell should have intercepted it for a touchdown. And if I don't know if I'm kind of catching out of the top of my sights here, but you can see when Eddie goes to throw it, watch Bobby Bell. He has the ball.
Yep.
Oh,
it's right. And he tips it. So he catches the tip of it. And then I catch the back end of the ball. And then once I catch it, it's over because there's nobody over there. And it's super fun. And you can see that's me with no sense of unfiltered. This is right now. I am unfiltered. There's completely zero filter, with no plan whatsoever. Like, I don't know what to do, and it's super odd. But one of the cool things, to catch a touch. I just loved it. I wish we would have done way more of it. Looking back, I wish that I just think the quarterbacks could, I could have done a lot more interesting, cool stuff. It just, hadn't thought of it yet.
Oh, an iconic moment, no doubt. I think the next time you talk to Lee Johnson, you should remind him that he was 11 for 23 kicking field goals that season, and that's why you went for it on 4th and 10.
I'll call him today on that one. But I kind of beat him up too much because, he's the biggest loser in NFL history. There was a time, I want to say some backup quarterback took his spot, but for a time he'd suited up for a team, Cincinnati or Houston or somebody, that had lost more games than any other player in the history of the game. He is the biggest loser in NFL history, which is amazing, right? Because you have to play a lot of NFL games to be the biggest loser in NFL history. But I didn't know that about his kicking. LJ was my nickname for him is RQ Jones. I don't know where that comes from, but he was the kind of guy that wanted to. He's like, the only thing I'm really interested in is the 75-yarder. You know what I mean? Like this 35-yard thing, I don't really care about, but the 75-yard is what I'm looking for. And so, I did not want to put him in front of the 35-yarder.
Oh, great stuff. Steve, needless to say, we appreciate you taking some time with us. A lot of good laughs, and we're grateful that we had the opportunity to put the spotlight on this 1983 team.
I appreciate it. I do. I actually feel better about it. You guys helped me. It was cathartic. There's certain pieces of my career that I have still throw up in my mouth a little bit every time I hear what happened or what game it was, like the 92 championship game against the Cowboys it just happened again. There's times when I just hear, in 83, the Baylor game is one of those moments, but I'm appreciating the fact that you guys really helped me kind of see the truth of what we did. Because going to UCLA was huge, and the Rose Bowl at that time in BYU's history was a big deal. So there's some real big, good things to think about in 83. And then 84, as you know, I don't know who was the color commentator for BYU TV.
It was you!
Yeah, that's right. You guys got to get on that one.
It was you.
You got to thank the USFL for that one. Yeah.
Me and Jay Monson.
That's right.
There was one game that it wasn't Jay Monson. It was actually carried by CBS regionally. And then who did I do the game with?
I don't know. I have no idea.
Jim Nance.
Oh, no kidding.
When he was at KSL?
He was KSL.
Okay, yeah.
And Jim Nance and I did a pregame thing from the field, and then went to the new elevator because the new, LaVell Stadium had the new elevator behind. We went back to the elevator, rushed up to try to catch the beginning of the game because we were on camera, and the elevator got stuck.
I've heard this story.
We've heard this story.
Yes.
That's epic.
For 15 minutes, and there was dead air. It was like just the game, and no one saying anything on CBS regional TV until Jim Nance and I got up there. We laughed about that at the AT&T Pebble Beach thing when we saw each other. Every time we see each other, we laugh about being stuck in the elevator together. And I'm a little claustrophobic, and that's the biggest memory I have is like trying to panic in front of Jim Nance that like I got to get out of this elevator.
Hello, friends.
Anyway, way
Get me
too
out
much
of here.
information. That's for another show that we got to cover more things. But 83, I appreciate you guys are the best. I love listening to you and being a part of any show you ever want to do. Thanks.
You got it, man.
Thanks,
Steve, great to talk to you.
All right, take care, guys.
Steve Young, an all-time interview.
Oh, that was epic.
An all-timer.
That was great, man. Like so much insight, so many memories. Interesting to see that he is not over that Baylor loss, right? And just so many amazing memories and stories. Awesome.
Yeah.
That was great.
Wow. As always, brought to you on the Deseret First Credit Union Hotline. Deseret First, you know why, we show how.